Welcome. Good to have you here. The Turbo Velo Tuesday Night Crit, Masters 40 plus race, Series 3, race 4 out of 4. The team that I'm on, Cheney, Windows, and Door, we've sealed up the series championship with Andy leading. So we're going into this race not needing to put Andy on the podium or get him points. He's already sealed the series championship. But we have a chance to put an additional teammate or two on the podium, and that's going to be a focus of this particular race. This race, I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the team in brief and talk about what we're doing now. So this particular race series, Series 3, is kind of our team's introduction in a way to the local racing scene here in the Dallas area. Meaning that up until the start of this series, which was just 4 races ago, it was just me, Ryan, and Andy who were racing together. And earlier in the season, it was basically just me and Andy together. And you could argue, Andy might argue from his perspective, it was just him on the team, meaning that he was doing mostly stuff by himself because I wasn't really in great fitness. Not that I'm in great fitness now, but I was in particularly worse fitness then, not able to contribute a whole lot. Tried to do a little of what I could. But since that time, Ryan has been able to step back a little bit from running the crit. He's the promoter for this crit, and he's been able to join the racing. And we've also added additional teammates. So we've added Jorge, who used to be the promoter of the Tuesday Night Crit before Ryan was, and he used to run a team called Dallas Racing, and had a lot of good results and elite riders as part of Dallas Racing. So he has a ton of experience both as a racer himself, racing at a fairly elite level. I don't know all the details of that, but certainly way beyond anything I've ever done. And we also added a teammate named Adam. Adam is a former professional when he was younger, and raced some in Europe on a professional team. So again, that's way beyond anything that I've even sniffed. I mean, I can't even say I've been in the same hemisphere to sniff what he has done. Interestingly enough, Adam was also in the ESPN documentary for Lance Armstrong as someone that grew up as a friend of Lance's and raced bikes as well as Lance did. So ton of experience that we added just in the last few races to the team, which has completely changed the dynamic of the team. And I have to say, probably, if people who are watching this and other teams are honest, it's changed the dynamic of this race, meaning that we have become one of the stronger teams on the race. And I think if you look at the finish of this series, you could argue we are the dominant team right now of this race. Just to fast forward a little bit, I already told you that Andy finishes the series as number 1, just on the basis of the points that he got in the first 3 races. And we end this series with 1st, 3rd, and 4th place in the series. And so that is an excellent result for our team that basically just kind of came together as these guys, all together in one group. So we're just kind of learning how to race together, and Andy, of course, he's super strong, great breakaway threat all the time. So then you have, so you have these guys, then you have me, who's basically just glorified recreational rider who happened to take up racing and really, with no palmares or significant experience on my part. So this is a case of me being with guys who are more experienced, have more racecraft, more knowledge, and that's fun because that means that I'm racing with people who are tactically smart, but it's one thing to have like really fast people on your team and smart people on your team. it's also a matter of what the cohesion is like on the team and how they work together. So the people who got first, third, and fourth, Andy, Ryan, and Jorge, in that order. Well, we have Adam, who is not in the top 15 in terms of points finish in the series, who is, I forgot to mention, Andy's a former national, I keep saying Andy, Adam, who's not in the top 15 of the series. Not only is he a former professional bike racer, he's also a former national champion, and I believe in the track discipline. So that gives you an idea that you have someone of that caliber who's not finishing in the series with any significant points, but he's contributing to the team and sacrificing his efforts to help the team finish. Imagine having someone of that caliber who's willing to do that, and imagine that everyone on the team is willing to sacrifice for one goal. That's going to set things up in quite a different way. So I just, that's a little kind of like shout out to the team. Just in some ways you can say we just formed. I was the first club person who joined, I think, when I joined last year, and it took me a long time to feel like I was fit enough to ride, to race, and that's what I did. 2 races last year, 2 of these Tuesday night crits, and the first race I did in the B race I won, and then the next week I won the 40 plus, smaller fields and stuff, but I was just racing by myself. There were no teammates with me on that ride, so this is quite a bit different to be racing with these guys in this situation with a completely different tactical focus. And we're still trying to feel out, what we're going to do and what our strategy is, and also how can we use our ability and tactics to try to put our stamp on the race and dominate the race, make sure our guys are in the breaks, make sure that we, if we can, win the sprint, that we control the sprint, and just trying to assert ourselves and get the best results possible. But it's for fun. It's for the enjoyment of it. We're not making money. We don't aspire to, be in the newspaper, I guess, if that's still a thing, or whatever. It's for the enjoyment of the sport. All right. Hope I didn't talk your ear off too much about that, but that's what, I think every team should be aspiring to. I guess that sounds a little bit too grandiose, like we're something that other teams don't aspire to, or we have something that other teams don't. Other teams have this too, and they work together, and they have this, but it's just kind of, I'm just commenting on what it's like when something forms new that wasn't present before. Some of these teams have been around for 10 plus years, or quite a bit longer, or 20 plus years. So it's different for us in that we're a new entity forming together. Even though I know all of these guys that are on my team, I have never raced with them before. So it's a completely different experience to race against someone versus racing with someone. So for example, years ago when I did focused on the B race, because we didn't have a 40 plus crit back then, Ryan was someone I definitely had my eye on in terms of a sprint rival, and someone that I was concerned about where he was, what he was doing, how much energy he'd put in terms of finishing in the sprint finish, for example. And last year when I won the 40 plus crit, Andy was a significant player in that race and made a significant difference in terms of the tactics and what I had to think about and what I had to do. So, these are guys that I've known, but just sort of like, athletes against each other. Although I will say that Ryan is an excellent coach in terms of giving suggestions, advice, and very generous in doing that, even with persons whom he's competing against. So you figure if he's willing to be generous with people he's competing against, imagine how generous he might be with people that he's competing with. So that's one reason that I thought it would be fun for me to race with Ryan. And that's why I joined the team, even though I was the first one with nobody else. Anyway, I'm done patting myself on the back. Let's talk about the race. Here on my left, you can see the stars and stripes. That's Michelle. She is a former national champion herself. This is a mixed field, men and women, although in this race there's but one woman. And we see that the field is kind of strung out right now. Essentially what this race boils down to is a series of attacks, breakaways that don't get too far away, and trying to understand the composition of those breakaways, who's not been included, and what people in the back are doing to respond. And essentially, it's not rocket science here. What our team tends to do is to repeatedly attack with breaks. And if we're successful, great. If we like the composition of the break, we feel like we're going to be on the podium or perhaps win from that break, great. And we'll try to control the ride, the race, to make that break work. Now, if the break is caught and other people are doing that work to bring back the break, then ideally we're going to go over the top and attack again. So over and over. However, on such a low wind day as today, it's less likely that a break will be successful unless there are tactical reasons that the group decides to let the break win. The average pace of this race was about, I think, 26.5 miles per hour, somewhere around there. So you have to be able to hold as a breakaway that kind of speed to be able to stay away. We had pretty good representation today from a number of teams. I've mentioned Cadence before. They're one of the biggest, strongest teams. Other players of great significance would be Pegasus, who was on the podium last week in the final sprint. And Pack came out in greater numbers today and play a role in this race. Pack is the red and black stripes and yellow just ahead of me there. You can see my teammate Jorge there with the yellow striped wheels and the white striped jersey. We are a mixed group of both that jersey and a yellow-blue jersey. So that's Adam on the red bike just ahead of Jorge with the white striped jersey. He's the one I was talking about that is a former national champion as well as former professional. So me, in terms of my strategy, I am planning, if there is a sprint finish, that I will be instrumental in the lead out of that sprint finish. And most likely I will be taking the first significant pull to ramp up the group's speed, to try to hold off any people who are attacking, to control the sprint and to make it fast going into the final part of the sprint. That's going to be what I perceive as my role. Of course, everything could change. Another decision that I have to make is what role I might play in attacking in a breakaway attempt, or to control attacks, or control attempts to bring back the breakaway in which there is someone up ahead from my team that's in the breakaway that is advantageous to the team. I really do a poor job in almost every turn on this race. That's something I need to work on. If you're watching me, I'm not doing it right. I'm constantly dropping wheels in some of those turns with the dips and things. So I know that's something I can do better, and I can conserve more energy if I do that. Low wind day, so there wasn't a huge advantage to being sheltered in the crosswind here. And I believe the wind was a little bit from the south, which would be from the left side from this vantage point, on the left side of the screen. How far are we into the race? We are about 15 minutes at this point. Everyone's kind of warmed up. And this is a relatively short race because we run 4 races at this crit every Tuesday night. The C race, the B race, the 40 plus Masters, and the A race. And the Masters race is the 3rd race. If you're a Cat 3 40 plus, you can race the B race, the Masters 40 plus race, and the A race, all for the low cost of $20. You can't beat that. I don't think you can beat that, because most places in America you can't do a crit at all. And certainly if you can do a crit, I doubt you can do that many races for $20. So it's a really useful price to encourage people to jump in and try racing and do as much as they want. I will tell you, it's really hard to do 3 races in a row if you spend any kind of energy in those races. You can use kind of one race to warm up for another race, depending on how much time and effort you put into that race. But lately, I have not been doing the B race as a warm-up, which I did earlier in the year. What's going on the front here? Got a rider in red. Andy, my teammate, is in a red jersey. And he is not the guy in front, because I can see Andy on the left front part of the pack. Actually, it's mid-pack at this point because they're so strung out. Me, I am sitting back and trying to conserve as much energy as possible. Do as little as possible so that I have energy when I need to use it. So I am really not in the mix. I am not influencing the race in any form or fashion. I am conserving energy with the idea that I may influence the race later when I burn my matches. Again, the guys fan out a little bit because it's slowed down and there isn't a lot of motivation on the front to go, although there are guys ahead that are going. It's kind of like that pause. Here on the left, the fellow, not James here in the blue Mirage, but the guy right ahead of James, that's Calvin. I hope I'm not ruining things, because I don't really show the sprint finish. I guess I just ruined that too. This is a sprint finish, but Calvin ends up 3rd. So, if you watch this race, you can kind of see what people are doing, and you can say, hey, that guy ended up 3rd. How did he treat the race? I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to Calvin just because I'm paying attention to everything. I didn't know who he was during the race or before the race, although I'd heard his name before after I saw the results. He's, I think, not from the Dallas area, out of town. Good to have out-of-town people at the race. But anyway, you can watch what they do and say, okay, maybe he conserved a lot of energy. Maybe he didn't do a lot of work on the front. How did he treat his positioning at the end? Again, I don't think my video will actually show that part because I don't have a rear camera on board, but that's something that you can think about and consider. We're also going to see some tactics related to pack in terms of how they try to control the race at the end. I think we should pay attention to Pegasus. This is a Pegasus rider. I think this is Kato right in front of me to the left with the blue and white kit, and they end up doing pretty well in this race, and what they're doing in terms of bringing back breakaways and such. So for example, at least at one point, this might be right now actually, there is a breakaway up the road that Pegasus is not in, and they put in some work to bring that back. So that's how you know a team is in the game, when they're working together and helping control the race by influencing what's happening, by either getting into brakes, starting brakes, bringing back brakes, etc. We are almost 20 minutes into this. Here's Bren on pack, just following up a little, moving up with him. Got Brent from Cadence. He and Brent and Bren are the largest human beings in this race, and Brent, he's a sprinter, and we got to watch out for him. And but Brent is strong. He's won the 50 plus Texas Cup. He's won the A race of the Tuesday night crit, Cat 1, 2, 3. So he's someone that we really have to keep an eye on in this race. Here's Calvin pointing with his finger down just then, and he ends up third place. So keep an eye on him in terms of when he appears in frame and what he's doing and not doing. Might be a little bit illustrative. And I guess he has a GoPro on the front and back, so maybe he was recording, and maybe he has a channel himself. Calvin, if you see this and you want to link to your channel, I'll put your video of the ride in my comments so people can see how you used your strategy and what you did in the race, if you'd like that. We might have had a couple of other people that also recorded the ride and might put up videos that might include Brent and Sam, and of course, if I remember and they post the videos, I will put the links to those in the videos as well. I like to look at those because sometimes that gives me advantage of myself, particularly in key moments where it's kind of fun to see yourself, not always be the person with the camera. One thing about my teammate Jorge there just past me with the red helmet, he's just so good at like comfortably moving through tight spaces. I've had this happen to me when he was on other teams. He's like, he just takes my position. It's like, boom, he's there. And I'm like, what the heck happened? So he's crafty. He's good. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to handle a bike. One thing to consider, I think that's an interesting challenge, is how to do a sprint lead out, a team lead out for a final sprint in a crit. I'm trying to think how many times I've actually seen this really happen at my level of racing as a Cat 3. There's a caveat here that I don't really have extensive experience. I mean, I've never done a road race, so that tells you my level of experience. But I've done a fair number of local crits, and it almost never happens. Now, I think part of it is because it's amateur racing. It's hard to do. Everyone has to practice it. Everyone has to be on the same page. Everyone has to have a certain ability to where they can participate and add to the results of the attempt. Here we see Pegasus rider moving up on the right. Again, he's another rider to watch as far as results of how he did in the race and what kind of efforts and positioning he got in the race. So he did very well in the final bit of the race. And I'll just go ahead and say this. He won the race. This guy, this Pegasus, I believe that's him, the Pegasus rider who just went by me. My teammate up there, you can barely just see him in the yellow striped blue. I'll point him out when we get closer. That's Ryan. You can see him again here, kind of like 4 or 5 riders ahead of me. Yellowish blue kit. He gets second in this particular race. And again, I've mentioned before, it's a sprint finish. So not only did he get second in the race, but he put in attacks, breakaway attempts. He wasn't just sitting in like me during this race. Here we have this left-hand turn through the dip. It's not too bad. Not bad at all, I would say, at regular speeds, but can be a little bit hairy for some people at full final lap speeds. And that's often about where things really, really kick off for the sprint. A little bit of sketch moment there in the group. Got to be careful. None of us want to go down. This is for fun, not for eating pavement. I've already eaten pavement once this year. I don't plan to do it again. How many laps do we have left? I think that's at 4. Yeah, I believe that's 4. And the bell was ringing. This is a preem lap. So even though it's kind of hard for me to comment who's off the front because it's hard to see the riders on video, when you're in person, you can see better and you can see the uniforms. You know who the riders are. You know if your team is represented. And in general, with almost all these attacks, my team was represented, even though I was not contributing to those. It was something I was debating about doing, whether I should or not. But as time went on, I decided that I would just conserve energy for my role at the end. Plus, I did not feel like it was particularly likely that anything I would do would lead to a breakaway attempt that was successful. Even if that's the case, that might contribute to winning. Here's RG in front of me on Cadence, and he's got cameras too, so there might be like 5 videos of this race. That's a drone up ahead of us in the air. So I think there must be drone footage of the race by someone as well. So some guys off the front, 4 laps, 3 laps, if you're a breakaway specialist, it's kind of now or never. As we build up towards a sprint finish, it's increasingly unlikely that a solo person is going to get away for like 2 laps. It's kind of the ability to break the will of the peloton decreases as we get closer to the finish, especially on a low wind today. So it's looking more and more like it's going to be a sprint finish, and the group comes together. RG, that man loves to attack. He's definitely a breakaway specialist, and he's off to the races with Jimmy from Pack on his wheel. And again, our guy's going to respond. Who's going to pull? Who's going to do the work? All of these things come into play related to the strategy of the race, and we're strung out here as guys chase this down attack. So me here in the back, it's kind of like this accordion effect where the string gets pulled straight into a single file, but you can save your energy by not doing a heck of a lot of acceleration by letting other people do that chasing and just staying on wheels. But as we get closer to the end, it's going to become increasingly important to have good positioning. And ideally, I will be collecting teammates, moving to the front, and taking on my role for controlling the sprint finish for at least part of this. In most of my quote-unquote career doing amateur crits, I have been looking out solely for my own finish. I would say there are some exceptions to that where I did provide a specific kind of sprint lead out, but I would say that only happened maybe 2 or 3 times. It was successful, I would say, and I think I contributed to some success that way, but in general, not really had much experience with organized team efforts in sprints, i.e. people voluntarily working for other people. I think it was more like in the past, things might have accidentally worked out, but not so much coordinated, really, I was going to say thoughtful, but that's not correct. People do know, for example, if I attack with a lap to go, that might help my teammates, even though I'm probably not going to make it. But, that's about the level of coordination that I'm kind of accustomed to. And so getting actually guys together for an organized sprint is a whole different ball of wax. As we get closer and closer to the final laps, we are in the final laps, I'll have to be thinking about what I do to help my team, since I've been sitting in and have been conserving energy this entire time. And as we get closer to the finish, everyone thinks, I got a chance. And in reality, not everyone has a chance. As I've mentioned before in videos, there's probably, I don't know, just throw out a number. There's probably only about 10 people who really can win. If you're like doing betting odds, after those 10, the odds would fall off dramatically. Because only a certain number of people here can win a sprint finish with the group. And even if you have a breakaway, only a certain number can win from the breakaway. I.e. there are some people that would never win from a breakaway if there are 2 riders in the breakaway. So anyway, that's something we have to think about. But that doesn't mean that's what people believe. We'll keep an eye on Brent. He's the very big, tall guy, about 5 riders ahead of me on Cadence in the black and white. He's going to be interested in a sprint finish and getting off the front. Here we are going into probably what is a mild cross headwind, but not terribly bad. So you're not sacrificing a whole lot to be out in the wind. See that my teammate Adam is They're on my left briefly. I'm moving up. Teammate Ryan, he finishes second in the sprint, so you saw him go backwards there. He had done an attack just earlier and been caught with a couple laps to go. So I know after the fact here that he's fallen back and is not in good position going to sprint, but he still gets second, so keep that in mind. So here we are with about a lap and a half to go. Here's Pack going to the front, these two guys in front of me. And here's Chris Lee on my left. Very strong, very fit. He does the pop ride, so I have an idea of how fit he is. Very fit. And I'm third wheel now. I'm third wheel and preparing for my job to do the sprint finish. I think this rider in front of us is actually off the back. I'm not sure. Off the front or off the back. But either way, we're going to catch him. Boom! There goes Brent. I told you he's a sprinter that we want to watch out for. And he does this early attack. So what, we're about like 1 1/3 laps to go. About 1.3 miles to go. And he is off to the races in a full sprint. And I had this moment of, should I chase him or not? Should I get on his wheel? I didn't react fast enough. My brain didn't like make the decision right away. And then I had to think about it consciously. And like a couple seconds had passed and I was like, no, I'm not going to chase. I'm just going to be patient and see what happens. And hope that these guys in front of me will chase him down, or at least do a significant amount of the chasing. I did feel like I could jump and get back to that. I did, but I wanted to be patient and wait. So at this point I see we have 1 lap to go here. I see that Brent was sitting up and not pedaling, which I thought was strange until I realized Brent had miscalculated the laps and he had sprinted a lap early. And so he realized that, he hears the bell, and I talked to him after the race. He said he thought it's over for me. It took us forever to catch up to him. He was way ahead. I think he probably could have still attacked and played a larger role, but when he saw us catching him, he kind of like, I burned my matches and I don't have any matches left for a second sprint. It would be almost impossible to do that. But here we go, and it is the last lap. The lap is about a mile from full, and I'm thinking, I know Adam, my teammate's right behind me. I don't know the composition of who's behind him, and he tells me to go. I start to go, but not really on the gas. Pack rider Chisholm goes to the front here, does a little pull. I talked to him afterwards. He said he was hoping that his teammate would be able to slot in like third or fourth wheel with that pull. And here I am on the front, and now I am pushing. Let's see, so wattages, high 500s, low 600s, and I'm just trying to keep this fast so that nobody can accelerate past me, and I am controlling the race. I'll go as long, as hard as I can, and then Adam will take over, and then hopefully our guys are on his wheel and we'll do that. Now what I didn't realize is our guys were not on Adam's wheel. We were actually pulling 2 guys from Pegasus instead of our own teammates, and our guys were having to really work hard to move up to catch us. So essentially we were doing a lead out for a different team, our rival, and not really a lead out for our own team. So not perfect here, but I'm out of energy here. Adam goes by, here comes Pegasus, and then there's Ryan on the back of the 2 Pegasus riders with Andy on his wheel, and we end up 2nd, 4th, and 5th in the sprint. So a good finish, although we'd like to have ended up first, and we didn't really pull off the team sprint quite as well as we'd liked, but it was fun to play a role in that, and we sealed up the series championship. It was already sealed, and we ended up, of course, 1st, 3rd, and 4th in the series. So excellent results. I hope you've enjoyed this discussion about teamwork and team composition, and a little bit about sprint finishes in a crit race. Subscribe if you'd like. Give me a like if you'd like, and I feel like that's a de rigueur thing to say, but it does help me feel more motivated. Anyway, good times. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.